I never expected a single conversation to change everything. Yet, as I sat in the quiet break room of the modern downtown office, the words of my mentor, Aaron, still echoed in my mind. "Prove to me that your vision isn't just a fleeting thought," he had said, his tone both challenging and strangely intimate. I remembered the firmness in his voice and the intensity in his gaze. It was unlike any conversation we had shared before. I had joined the company straight out of college, eager to prove myself in a competitive field. Aaron, a senior manager known for his exacting standards and sharp insights, had taken me under his wing. At first, his attention felt like a natural extension of his role as a mentor, a series of supportive comments, occasional personal advice, and guidance on my career path. But over the past several weeks, I began noticing subtle shifts in his behavior. In the beginning, his compliments about my work and the thoughtful, encouraging words he offered during our one-on-one sessions seemed entirely professional. However, as time went on, I sensed an underlying tension in his approach. Simple gestures, an extra long look when discussing my ideas, a touch on my shoulder during a stressful meeting, or a lingering pause after an otherwise routine conversation, left me wondering if there was more behind his professional interest than I had ever considered. One afternoon, as I was leaving the office after a long day of meetings, I noticed that Aaron had left his office door ajar. Curiosity and a faint sense of unease compelled me to glance inside. There, among neatly arranged files and a single framed quote on the wall, his eyes met mine across the room. He set aside a stack of papers, and in a hushed tone, said, "You have no idea how special your perspective is." There was a warmth in his voice that contrasted sharply with the formality of the surroundings. I managed a small, uncertain smile, unsure whether to respond or simply let the moment pass. In that quiet exchange, I realized that I needed to be more attentive, not only to my work but also to the growing ambiguity in our interactions. That evening, after everyone had left the office, I sat alone in my small apartment and replayed the day's events in my mind. Aaron's words had unsettled me, yet they also sparked a peculiar kind of excitement. I had always prided myself on being rational and focused, but now I felt caught in a silent struggle, the desire to explore these new, undefined feelings versus the need to remain professional and true to myself. In the days that followed, our interactions became increasingly layered. Aaron began inviting me to lunch at a quiet, upscale bistro in the heart of the city. One such afternoon, as I joined him at a private table in a secluded corner, he ordered an expensive bottle of wine and carefully arranged for a discreet setting. The atmosphere was modern and polished, a perfect backdrop for serious discussion. While our conversation ostensibly centered on my career prospects and the future of our department, I couldn't help but notice the subtext in his words. "You should think more about what you truly want," he advised, his tone measured yet personal. "Your talent is undeniable, and you have the potential to redefine your future if you dare to look beyond the conventional." His hand briefly brushed mine as he spoke, a gesture that, while meant to be supportive, left me with a flutter of uncertainty. At the time, I told myself it was merely the enthusiasm of a dedicated mentor, a belief that such remarks were part of nurturing a young professional's confidence. But deep down, I sensed that there was something more at play, a subtle invitation to cross an unspoken boundary. As our lunch ended and we stepped out into the warm afternoon, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and apprehension. The gentle hum of city life around us only magnified the intensity of my inner conflict. Back at the office the next day, I tried to refocus on my tasks, yet Aaron's presence seemed to permeate every corner of my workday. Every meeting, every casual encounter in the hallway carried a hint of that unresolved tension. I began to scrutinize every interaction, noting the way he would lean in a little too closely when discussing new projects, or the way his compliments sometimes verged on the personal. It was as though each gesture was a carefully calibrated test, one that would reveal whether I was open to exploring a connection that defied the ordinary professional dynamic. Late one evening, as I worked late at my desk to meet a deadline, Aaron approached unexpectedly. The office had emptied, and the only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioner. "I want you to know," he said quietly, "that I see something truly remarkable in you." His words were calm, yet there was an unmistakable edge of intensity behind them. I looked up from my computer, caught off guard by his direct gaze. In that charged silence, I realized that our relationship had already begun to transform, moving away from strictly professional boundaries toward a more complex and uncertain dynamic. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions: gratitude for the recognition of my abilities, apprehension about the implications of his personal attention, and a cautious curiosity about where these ambiguous signals might lead. I resolved to maintain my composure, to keep my focus on my work and on preserving the integrity of my own goals, even as I acknowledged that every interaction with Aaron now carried a deeper, unspoken meaning. As I finally shut down my computer and left the office that night, the city lights twinkling outside the glass walls of the building, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would these evolving dynamics lead to new opportunities for growth, or would they force me to confront challenges that threatened to upend everything I had worked so hard to build? The uncertainty was both thrilling and intimidating. In the solitude of my walk home, I replayed Aaron's parting words over and over. The invitation to think beyond the conventional had stirred something inside me, a desire not just to succeed in my career, but to truly understand the complexities of human connection. I knew that in the days ahead, I would have to decide whether to embrace this unusual mentorship, with all its hidden layers, or to set firm boundaries and preserve the professional respect that had originally drawn me to him. By the time I reached my apartment, the early night air was cool and crisp. I closed the door behind me, determined to give the matter the thoughtful consideration it deserved. Tomorrow, I promised myself, I would return to the office with renewed focus and with an eye open to the subtle cues that defined the shifting nature of my relationship with Aaron. This marked the beginning of an unsettling shift, one that blurred the lines between mentorship and something far more personal. I was at a crossroads, caught between ambition and the human desire for connection. Every step I took from now on would shape not only my professional future, but also the unfolding story of a relationship that had quietly redefined what it meant to be truly seen. The days following that unsettling evening felt both exhilarating and disconcerting. Every interaction at the office carried a weight that I could no longer ignore. I began noticing even the smallest details: a subtle change in tone, a glance held a moment too long, and each one sent ripples through my thoughts. Aaron's approach had become more deliberate. At our next team meeting, as I presented my ideas for a new project, I could sense his focused attention. His eyes were not just on my words, but on every expression that crossed my face. After the meeting, he approached me with a thoughtful smile. "You truly have an innovative perspective," he said, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. The gesture was brief, almost casual, but its familiarity now carried an unspoken invitation. I couldn't tell if it was a mentor's supportive act or something more personal, but it certainly deepened the intrigue. Later that week, Aaron invited me to join a small brainstorming session with a few other team members. The atmosphere in the conference room was collaborative, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the center of his attention. Throughout the session, he would occasionally look up from his notes to watch me speak, nodding with genuine interest. When I suggested a radical new approach, his eyes lit up, and he leaned in closer, as if absorbing every nuance of my idea. "That's exactly what we need," he remarked, his tone earnest and encouraging. I left the meeting with a mix of pride and confusion, wondering if his enthusiasm was purely professional or if there was another layer hidden beneath his praise. Outside the office, the boundary between work and personal life began to blur. One crisp Saturday morning, I received an unexpected text from Aaron. "I'm heading to the art exhibit downtown. Would you care to join? I think you'd appreciate the creative atmosphere." I hesitated, aware that such invitations were becoming more frequent. Nonetheless, curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed. At the exhibit, a gallery filled with modern art and abstract installations, the ambience was as vibrant as it was enigmatic. The space seemed to mirror the very feelings I had been grappling with, beauty interlaced with an undercurrent of tension. Aaron and I wandered through the gallery side by side. At times, he would pause before a painting and share a brief insight that felt both poetic and intimate. "Art," he mused softly, "reminds us that beauty can emerge from chaos, and that sometimes, the most daring ideas come from breaking the rules." His words resonated with me, evoking a sense of possibility and daring. I found myself opening up, sharing thoughts I hadn't voiced before about ambition, vulnerability, and the risks of challenging convention. Over coffee at a nearby CAF? After the exhibit, our conversation took on an even more reflective tone. We discussed our personal philosophies, the paths that had led us to our current lives, and the challenges of pursuing one's dreams in a competitive world. Aaron's tone was gentle yet persuasive as he spoke about the importance of embracing change. Sometimes, he said, you have to let go of the familiar to grow. Isn't it fascinating how our lives are a series of calculated risks? His words weren't overtly personal, yet they seemed directed at me in a way that blurred the line between advice and invitation. Back at work the following week, I found myself more attuned to the subtle signals around me. Aaron's mentoring sessions became longer and more frequent. In one such session, as we reviewed my progress on a complex project, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You're evolving, not just as a professional, but as someone with a unique vision. I'd like to help you push your boundaries further." His statement left me with a lingering sense of both anticipation and apprehension. I couldn't tell if his offer was purely about professional growth or if he hoped to draw me into a more personal realm of connection. At times, I caught glimpses of his inner conflict. During a quiet moment by the window in his office, I saw him staring out at the city skyline, as if weighing the gravity of unspoken decisions. It was during one of these moments that he asked, "Do you ever feel like you're at a crossroads, where every choice might redefine who you are?" The question was simple yet profound, and it struck a chord deep within me. I replied thoughtfully, "Every day, I think about what my choices mean, not just for my career, but for the person I want to become." The honesty in that exchange felt like a turning point, a subtle acknowledgement of the personal stakes at play. The tension between us escalated gradually. One rainy afternoon, as I stayed late to finish an urgent report, I found myself alone in the quiet office. The rain tapped steadily against the windows, setting a contemplative mood. Just as I was about to pack up, I heard footsteps approaching. Aaron entered silently, carrying 2 cups of steaming coffee. "I thought you might need this," he said with a half-smile. His presence was calm and reassuring, yet every gesture seemed to speak of an unspoken promise. We sat together in the dim light, the only sounds the soft hum of the air conditioner and our quiet conversation. It was in these rare, vulnerable moments that I sensed the shifting dynamics most acutely. As our professional relationship continued to evolve, I began questioning my own feelings. Was I drawn to his mentorship because of genuine admiration for his expertise, or was there something more that I wanted to explore, a connection that transcended the usual boundaries of work? These questions kept me awake at night, as I struggled to reconcile my ambitions with the deepening emotional complexity of our interactions. Yet, amid the uncertainty, I also recognized the value of the experience. Aaron's influence had propelled me to take risks, to think boldly, and to challenge the status quo. His encouragement had opened doors for creative expression and professional growth. But with that growth came a heightened awareness of the potential costs. I worried that if the connection became too personal, it might compromise the clarity of our professional objectives. In quiet moments of reflection, I reminded myself of the importance of balance, of nurturing both ambition and personal integrity. I began to set small, deliberate boundaries to protect my space, ensuring that I remained focused on my own goals even as I navigated the complex dynamics with Aaron. I kept a journal, noting every significant interaction and my thoughts about them, hoping that through reflection, I might gain the clarity needed to decide how to proceed. One evening, after a long day of work and self-reflection, I received an email from Aaron inviting me to a leadership seminar he was hosting next month. The invitation was phrased with an inspiring tone, "I believe in your potential. Join me, and together we'll explore new horizons." The words were uplifting, and they made me wonder if perhaps the shifting dynamics between us were leading toward a transformation that could redefine my future. Yet, beneath the inspirational message, I sensed an underlying urgency, a call to step into uncharted territory without fully knowing where it might lead. That night, as I prepared for sleep, I pondered over the choices before me. The path was fraught with ambiguity, and every decision held the promise of both reward and risk. I resolved to remain mindful of my own values and to trust my instincts, even as I allowed myself to be inspired by Aaron's vision. The boundaries between mentorship and personal connection might blur, but I was determined to stay true to who I was. In the end, I knew that the journey ahead would be one of self-discovery, a path that required both courage and careful reflection. The shifting dynamics between Aaron and me had opened a door to new possibilities, but they also demanded that I confront my own desires, limitations, and aspirations. I was ready to step forward, cautiously yet resolutely, into a future where every interaction carried the promise of transformation. In the weeks that followed the seminar invitation, a palpable tension settled over our interactions. I found myself both anticipating and dreading each new encounter with Aaron. Our meetings became less formal, and the conversation often drifted into personal territories. The once clear boundaries of mentorship began to blur, leaving me to navigate a maze of unspoken emotions and hidden intentions. One chilly morning, as I walked into the office, I sensed that something significant was about to change. Aaron's expression was unusually somber, and his eyes carried a weight that made my heart race. He asked if we could talk privately, and I followed him to an unused conference room. There, in the quiet stillness punctuated only by the distant hum of the air conditioner, he admitted that his feelings for me had grown more complicated than he had ever intended. His voice was low and earnest as he spoke of admiration, longing, and a desire to break free from conventional roles. I listened, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. I had always seen him as a mentor, someone who had helped me unlock my potential professionally. Now, his revelation forced me to reconsider every interaction, every compliment that had once seemed so innocuous. Was it all part of a deeper connection, or had I misinterpreted his guidance? The confession left me with an unsettling mix of excitement and apprehension, as I struggled to reconcile my ambition with my need for personal clarity. In the days that followed, the atmosphere between us grew increasingly charged. Aaron made every effort to bridge the gap between our professional rapport and the personal revelations he had shared. At times, his gaze lingered just a moment too long, or his hand brushed against mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Yet, amid the growing intimacy, I sensed a caution in his actions, a hesitancy that hinted at his internal conflict. During one late afternoon meeting, as the golden light of the setting sun filtered through the office windows, I found the courage to ask the question that had haunted me. "Aaron, what do you truly expect from this?" I inquired softly, trying to steady my voice. His response was measured, acknowledging both his admiration and the complexity of the situation. "I believe in the potential for growth," he said, "for both of us, if we can redefine our connection without compromising what we have built professionally." His words were sincere, yet they left me with more questions than answers. That evening, alone in my apartment, I penned my thoughts in a journal, trying to make sense of the conflicting emotions. I realized that I was at a crossroads. To allow this evolving relationship to push me beyond my professional achievements, or to establish firm boundaries and preserve the clarity of our original dynamic. The uncertainty was overwhelming, yet I knew that every decision made in the coming days would shape not only my career but also my personal identity. A turning point came when I received an invitation from Aaron to attend a private dinner at his home, a gesture that seemed to blur the lines further. Torn between the allure of uncovering deeper truths and the necessity of maintaining my integrity, I decided that honesty was paramount. I reached out to him, suggesting that we meet in a neutral setting to discuss the future of our relationship, both professionally and personally. When we met at a quiet, dimly lit restaurant, the air was thick with unspoken anticipation. We spoke openly about our fears, our aspirations, and the risks of venturing into uncharted territory. While Aaron expressed his hope for a partnership that could elevate us both, I stressed the importance of preserving mutual respect and maintaining a clear focus on our professional goals. By the end of our conversation, we agreed to take a step back, to allow time for reflection and to re-establish the boundaries that had been compromised. The decision was bittersweet. It promised clarity but also marked a pause in a connection that had stirred feelings I wasn't ready to fully explore. As I left the restaurant that night, I felt both relief and a lingering curiosity about what the future held. In the silence that followed, I understood that the path ahead would require careful deliberation. The tension between ambition and personal desire, once hidden beneath polite smiles and measured words, had burst into the open. And now, with our boundaries tentatively reset, I braced myself for the challenges and revelations that lay ahead. After our heartfelt conversation at the restaurant, a cautious calm settled between us. We had agreed to take time apart, a temporary pause to reflect on our evolving connection and the delicate balance between our personal and professional lives. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my work and on rediscovering my own identity, free from the haze of uncertainty that had clouded my judgment for so long. During this reflective period, Aaron and I maintained a respectful distance. We exchanged occasional words of encouragement in meetings, each interaction measured and professional. The intensity of our previous encounters had softened into a quiet acknowledgement of mutual growth and understanding. I began to appreciate that the lessons learned through our complex journey were not solely about ambition or desire, but about the importance of maintaining one's integrity even when emotions ran deep. One crisp morning, as I prepared for a challenging project, I received an unexpected email from Aaron. In it, he expressed his sincere hope that we both had found clarity and that we might eventually rebuild our connection on new, healthier terms. His words, respectful and measured, resonated with the newfound determination I felt within myself. It was a gentle invitation to consider a future where our collaboration could flourish without blurring the lines we had once risked crossing. In that moment, I realized that every chapter of our experience had led me to a greater understanding of my own strengths and boundaries. While the road ahead remained uncertain, I was confident that I had the resilience to shape my own destiny. Aaron's influence had sparked a transformation, a shift from the unsettling ambiguity of our early interactions to a space of cautious optimism. Now, standing at the threshold of a new beginning, I embraced the quiet promise of tomorrow. With a steady heart and a clear vision, I resolved to move forward, carrying with me the wisdom of past lessons and the hope of genuine, respectful connection. Our journey, with all its complexities and revelations, had ultimately guided me toward a future where my true potential could shine, unburdened by the weight of unspoken expectations.